Welcome to another student edition of Great Books, featuring a panel of local students sharing their interest in classic literature. Here's your moderator, Jack Hatfield.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us for the Great Book Show Student Edition. I'm Jack Hatfield. Our panel meets to discuss great works of classic and modern literature. Today we're discussing a short story, The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. Since his death in 1924, Kafka has come to be regarded by many as one of the greatest modern writers. Published in 1915, this story is usually considered as his greatest work. To quote one critic, he was spokesman for perplexed, alienated, and frightened modern man. The Metamorphosis is about a traveling salesman, Grigor, who lives with his mother, father, and sister, for whom he was a sole financial supporter. He hates his job and he hates his company. And he's lost the joy of providing for his family. And he wakes up one morning having been turned into an enormous bug during the night. And surprisingly, Grigor and his family do not adjust well to this transformation. At the end of the story, he is injured and finally dies. This story is dreamlike, it's sad, it's funny, and they're all at the same time. First question is, I found that the transformations, the changes of all the characters were very interesting throughout the story. The first transformation is when, of course, when Grigor turns into a bug. How did he take that? What was his first reaction to this fairly traumatic event?
Well, I found that he, from my standpoint, I would have questioned why it happened or how it happened, but he just sort of accepted it as a fact. And from then he moved on, and his first thought was, how do I get out of bed? He didn't spend much time thinking about why or how. He didn't contemplate the reasoning. He just sort of accepted it and moved on.
Yeah, I agree. It was very much just, he woke up and he's like, oh, okay, I'm a bug. I guess that's it then. There wasn't as much as most people, I think, would be like, what? Why is this happening? How did this happen? Where am I? Has anything else changed? She's just like, oh, okay, I'm a bug. Now I have to get up. That's okay.
I would have been freaked out if I had just woken up and been a bug. I mean, I would have been wanting to understand why this happened, and I would have been scared. And Grigor seems very calm and resigned. At first he just thinks he's dreaming, but then he realizes this is how I am now, and he just kind of rolls with it.
Yeah, like on my book on page 28, it said, enough of this lying about uselessly in bed, he said to himself, which implies like he was ready to go back to work even as a beetle, which is strange and peculiar considering most people, he didn't think about the reactions of people would be to him returning to work. It was just his duty, and he accepted that, and that was the factual evidence to him.
All right, this is how things are. Now how do I make the best of this? I
found the story kind of switch back and forth between metaphors, which some of it's obviously metaphors, and other ones weren't metaphors. They were kind of entering the world of a bug. And when he tried to open the door with his teeth, the way he didn't have teeth, his gums. Yeah. And I was thinking, what came to me is denial, is this big change. And he really denied it. He says, I'm going to be late for work. He was really worried about that. So I was thinking there was kind of the allegory of when we get up sometimes and something's very wrong and we just deny it and just say, well, that's,
I think that's what Grigor's trying to do. He wants to say, nope, I'm going to live the life of a human even though I'm a bug.
I feel like a lot of it has to do with the fact that he is the sole provider for his family. And so it's like, oh, well, I have to get up, I have to do this. This is something he knows he has to do every day because he's afraid of getting fired because he's the only one who is providing money for his family, and that he knows there is no other money for his family to live off of. And so it is a lot of denial. He's just like, oh, well, everything's okay. I'm just gonna go to this and it's all gonna be fine and I'm gonna earn money and no one's gonna question it. Like, he's just like, maybe this is my own thing a little bit. I think he's kind of questioning if this is all in his own mind or not, at first at least.
But I also feel like it's almost a commentary about how, like with healthcare and stuff, people might feel sickly, but they will still put their problems aside because they are so concerned about providing for their family. So it's like health over profit.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Does Kafka give any hint on why he had Grieger go through this transformation?
No literal cause. I don't feel like he accidentally took a potion or anything that would turn him into a bug. There's no humanly explanation for it. I didn't feel I came across anything.
And I think that's part of what adds to the story, that there is no cause. There seems to just be, oh, he's an insect. And I think that's part of what makes it, gives it impact, that there is no reason.
Well, I feel like there's not necessarily a reason, but for sure it is trying to show that everyone has an uglier side of them, that maybe... I feel it also has to do a little bit with him being a traveling salesman, which is kind of a showy profession and a little bit of an acting kind of thing, and it has a lot to do with appearance, because when you meet someone, one of the first things they notice is your appearance. And I think it's very important that he turns into a bug, which is something so gross to everyone, because it's kind of showing that everyone has this uglier side, as well as it's just something that other people can't accept. And I think it's a good commentary on what he does and who is around him.
But I think part of the reason he turned into a bug, if you think about bugs, they're necessary, they do a lot of things for the earth, but they're really underappreciated, and everyone goes, ew, it's this crawly thing.
Yeah, vermin.
Yeah, that's what he called himself, and that's kind of a metaphor for what Grieger is, because he's underappreciated, even though his family relies on him, which I think is just an interesting comparison between the two.
Yeah, like he's low class in their society. He's not considered important to the community, but he is important to his family since he is the sole provider. So I feel like it definitely is important that he was turned into a beetle rather than a life-sized bunny or something, because that would change the story a lot in the meaning.
He was really going through a crisis. He hated everything. I mean, he just didn't like his life, and he didn't like anything about it. And the one thing he had enjoyed earlier was providing for his family. He's lost all that joy. He just came, and so to me, it was like a progression. Here's somebody who's just having a real problem with his life and lost all meaning, alienated from everything, and they're turned into a bug.
It's kind of interesting because if you think about the metamorphosis insects go through from larvae, pupaing to adult, that's Grieger kind of went the other way, that he was kind of happy and blooming at the beginning, and he liked providing for his family, he liked his life, and then he's kind of degressing from there into something kind of beat down and just kind of jaded.
What separates us as humans is like having joy in our life and having emotion and passion. And when he lost all that joy and passion, he turned into an insect.
Yeah. Did you think he was a victim? Did he deserve his fate?
I feel, if anything, he was a victim of circumstance. It wasn't necessarily his fault that this happened to him. It wasn't like he did something that caused him to become a beetle, as we discussed. And after his transformation, he is kind of the victim of his family's negative emotions. They blame everything on him. And they say, oh, it's his fault that we can't do this and that we can't support ourselves. And they just kind of blame every negative thing on him, which is human nature in a way. If there's something negative in your life, you're probably going to blame something on it. But it is a little unfair to Grieger.
I think this might be, in a way, a statement about futility. I mean, Grieger works hard, and while he might not really have any enjoyments, he's kind of underappreciated, and he works so hard, but all to come to naught. I think that might be Kafka making a statement about human condition, or what our lives may come to.
He definitely didn't see himself as a victim. He didn't blame other people for what happened to him. He didn't blame anyone for what happened to him. He didn't really think about it too much. But he definitely did the circumstance of his father losing his business, he took it on with a lot of pride and dutiful like sense. He provided for the family with pride until the end, which I found maybe he was a victim, but he never let himself become one. So there definitely was opportunity for him to be sad and be down on himself about this situation that he's put in, but he never really allowed that to happen, and he just sort of made the best of what he had.
What could he have done differently to change the story?
Honestly, someone put in that situation, it would have been really hard for them not to start hating their lives. Like, unless you just have a really powerful sense of optimism, maybe like putting aside some free time to do something that he enjoyed. Maybe he never found a pastime that he enjoyed. But yeah, that was pretty much my view on that subject.
Did he have any friends? Anything else? Yeah.
No, I agree that the situations that he was put in really didn't seem, I don't think he really could have seriously altered his life.
Yeah, he was stuck. I mean, his family didn't work, you know, and they could have. His father could have gone back to work, and he just sat around and did nothing. And his daughter was young, but she could have done something, and just, yeah.
He could have abandoned them, but he was too honorable to do that.
Right.
Which is almost like sometimes you have to think about yourself before you think about other people, which happens a lot in life.
Even though he is such a good person and a hard worker, and he didn't deserve this problem, that yet it happened to him, and no one appreciated him, and when it did happen, everyone was kind of too selfish or afraid to actually care about him.
Well, one thing let me ask as a question, when he died, it seemed to change the family tremendously to the good. I mean, all of a sudden his daughter found kind of her direction in his life as his father, and they were, one of the scenes, they were looking out at the sunset or something, and arm in arm, the three of them. Was it a story of sacrifice? Did he die so that they could live?
In a way, I think it was a sacrifice for the greater good of his family, because even at the end, when he was so weak and his sister was playing violin and the people who were staying in their house didn't appreciate it, he was so angry that they didn't appreciate his sister the way he did. And soon after he dies, I feel it is, in a way, his own sacrifice for the family. I don't think the family deserved it, because they were quite mean. But it was his own form of sacrifice.
It's kind of for the wrong people, all that. He gave so much to them, but they wouldn't give anything back to him. I mean, everyone disliked him when he was an insect, and all they could see was the vermin, not actually what he had done. And even when he died, they didn't even remember him for all he had done for them.
Greet was talking, and she said, "I am unwilling to utter my brother's name before this creature." Like, they didn't even perceive him as their son or brother. Like, I felt that once he stopped providing for the family, they sort of lost all respect and admiration for him. You
know, this story is told from Grieger's side. I mean, none of it was from any of the other members of the family. And if you were faced with a situation where someone in your family, you know, woke up as a bug and started to smell and rotting away and on, is it natural to change? Is it?
They became very angry at him, and I feel like most people would be more upset and sad and like, oh, I can't believe this happened to my family member. But they were just very angry at him. I feel like a lot of it was anger and disgust directed toward him, which might come from more of the symbolic side of the story, but I still found that interesting, the way that there was very little mourning, very little like, oh, I've lost my son. It was just, oh, he's a disgusting insect.
But didn't they try? I mean, his sister really felt pride that she was taking care of him.
Yeah.
And for a time.
Yeah.
And his mother obviously had, you know, she said one time, we still Grigor, you know, after, and So it wasn't right away they hated him. I mean, it was after a period of time where it was...
You know, it's interesting about Greet, how she felt pride taking care of Gregor, even though he was all ugly and insect. Interesting, because that's exactly kind of how Gregor was at the beginning. He felt pride taking care of his family, even though they were in another way ugly.
Yeah.
I wonder if Kafka's maybe making a statement about people in general. I mean, I'm not saying for certain Kafka thinks people are nasty and ungrateful, but I think maybe he might be letting those feelings of, ugh, is humanity really worth it? That all of us maybe might feel it sometimes, although we try to suppress it, come through in his writing. And maybe he's trying to soften it with the story about a guy who turns into an insect.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be on society or life in general. Is not, you can't really blame anybody in the story, at least from my point of view. And, you know, it just drives them to something different.
Yeah, because I felt at the beginning, like you said, his sister was kind to him and stuff, but by the end, they resented him, which I felt was sort of a criticism of like having a family member who not necessarily turned into an insect, but having a family member who changed, like whether that is an illness or mental or physical or went through a personality change or something. Like a lot of times change is hard for people, and taking care of other people can be a good thing, and like charities and stuff like that, but relying on one sole person to care for another can be a tasking and changing effect.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of this showed the mentality towards mental illness in this time period for sure, because it's not necessarily that Gregor thinks of himself as ugly, it's that everyone else thinks of him as ugly. It's in a way like, in that time, having a mental illness was terrifying to other people. It was something that could not be shared and was inappropriate, and they were just put away and kind of forgotten about, the way that Gregor was, who's shut in that room forever. And eventually, when he dies, they're free, which is kind of in a way either saying when this person with a mental illness dies, the family is free, or when they're put away in a permanent way, they're free. I feel like it was very symbolic of mental illness, and that was something I saw right away, because just the complete way where everyone else was so appalled at his physical appearance, symbolic of maybe his a mental disorder or something like that, and he was okay with it. Like, he was just, well, this is what happened, and everyone else was terrified.
Could it also be just acceptance of someone that's not normal?
Yeah.
Of whatever.
Yeah,
reason.
people usually, it happens all the time. I mean, people just can't really seem to stand anything that's different or just opposite of what they usually see.
Yeah.
So, looking at the other changes, looking at the daughter's changes, why do you think she changed? I mean, she obviously she was a kind of a not ne'er-do-well at first, but not terribly motivated, but she loved her brother and she helped. And at the end, she was the one that finally said, "We got to get rid of him." Yeah.
I think that maybe after taking care of Gregor, she kind of found some of that burdening responsibility in herself, which is kind of sad because she seemed so free at the beginning. She wanted to learn how to play the violin, and she was doing that. And she, out of all of them, seemed to have the most joy in her life. But now she's making this rather cruel decision about Gregor, and then she has to get a job. So she's kind of being weighed down by all of this in a similar way that Gregor was.
She makes a transformation from child to adult, which is very taking on responsibility and realizing that not everything in the world is smiles and joy. So I felt like that definitely dampened her characteristics a lot. In the beginning, she was happy to be taking care of Gregor because throughout the past, he had always taken care of her. And by the end, I feel like her working in the real world and realizing the responsibilities that you have to take on not only for yourself but for your family definitely changed her opinion towards Gregor.
And there's a limit. I mean, you know, she just reached, it's like taking care of someone that after a bit you kind of go, you know, this is close to the limit. And,
For sure, I think it was her growing up. At the beginning, she's a child and she loves her brother and she decides to take care of him. And then for a while, she's very consistent and very loving. But at some point, I think she just kind of resents him for making her take care of her because no one else is going to take care of him, and so she has to. And at some point, after they all have to start getting jobs and all, she's like, well, I can't anymore. And she's just kind of done. She realizes I can't do everything.
I think that Greets, she's kind of already seemed to be on the same track as Gregor was, which is kind of saddening because at the beginning she was so innocent and free. But I think after this whole experience, I think she might be going down the same path as Gregor to just being kind of jaded against everything and hating your life, resentfulness, and maybe she won't turn into an insect like he did, but I think that she's being burdened down, and while she's becoming more responsible, she's losing her joy in life.
Is that backed up on anything in the story? That might be right. I just wonder if it's in the story.
She resents Gregor in the same way that Gregor kind of resents his work.
But then he dies.
Yes.
And they're free.
Well, I feel like, she might have been on the same path as him, but by his sacrifice, by his release, I feel like he released her from that because in the end, they were very happy. They rejoiced almost in his death, which is a completely different topic, but I don't feel like she's following that same path now. Like, she does have a job, which is sort of the cause of Gregor's demise, but I feel like she'll probably handle it more, and that, yeah, basically.
She might have been released, but it's kind of in a sickening way that she is that everyone's happy about someone's death. And while that might have been releasing her from this burden of taking care of him, I have to wonder, I mean, do you think she'll ever remember being happy that her brother has died and being disgusted at what he is, or was, I guess?
Do you think that I mean, he was a transformation. He seemed to become more and more an insect and less human as the story goes through. And do you think that at a point, if you were in her shoes, you would have just said, that's not him anymore. That's just an insect. And it's a different way of looking at him.
I feel like in their situation where you wouldn't be able to see it from Gregor's perspective, it would be very difficult to keep the mentality that it was your brother and not an insect, which, again, like you said about the mental illness, like when all their characteristics from before are taken away, it's hard to identify them as a person that you've loved for all those years. So I don't know if I'd be able to personally keep him in my perspective as my brother and more than just something that I had to deal with, especially since he's not able to communicate with you the way they used to.
I have to agree. I mean, I hate to admit it, and I hope that none of my family ever turns into a bug. But I probably, from my perspective, would start losing that sense of they are human, they are my family, I have to take care of them, and I love them. Also, I found it interesting that both Gregor's family and Gregor are kind of losing their humanness in different ways.
My mother died of, she had Alzheimer's, 6 years in Alzheimer's. And, you know, when she doesn't recognize you and anything that you do doesn't make any difference to you, you have this real tendency to look at people a very different way. And that's, it's very difficult to keep that same feeling. And I kind of read that into the story, so. What did you, just in general, what did you pick up from the story?
I kind of picked up a sense of, there seemed to be a sense of definite pessimism from Kafka about humans, but it's weird. There are like little bits of optimism in the story, like how he wanted to stop the furniture from getting removed from his room, and I think that's kind of a symbol that he still had hope, and that despite awful things happening, despite our own problems, we still have hope.
I felt like it was very sort of a commentary on monotony and talking about how if you do the same thing every day and if you don't do anything that you love, then what differs you from those animals that just go out through their life maintaining only to survive. So it was very about humanity and how love and passion separates us from the animals to me.
I agree with Catherine. I thought a lot of it was after he lost his love for what he was doing, he became useless in a way. And it's a statement saying you need to enjoy what you're doing, otherwise, what's the point of it all?
I got all that. Plus, it was kind of a, I've woken up in the morning and just feeling like a bug and just going, oh, gee, what am I doing? And, you know, just kind of going through a day or something like that, just feeling awful and not being able to interface with other people very well. You know, his voice went, so he couldn't communicate, which is really a breakdown in their communication. And for me, it's kind of, a lot of people go through all those emotions, all those sort of situations in kind of a minor way throughout their life. It was certainly true to me when I was your age, is getting up and I had pimples or something like that and going, oh, geez, I don't want to see anybody, I'm turning it into something else. So
I feel like it also showed a lot of having someone see you as something that you're not, because he's a person, he's not a bug in his mind and in many other ways, but everyone else can only see him as a bug, and I feel like a lot of people could relate to that on some level, having someone see them as some way and other people seeing people in another way. It's kind of showing how different people can see people in different lights, and depending on how they view themselves.
Well, we should probably wrap it up now, so thank you. It's one of these stories that I found is maybe not as fun to read as this to discuss, because it's a great topic of this, how to get through life. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. Join us next time as we discuss another great selection. As Aristotle said, the best way to learn is to get together in small groups and discuss great ideas.